Hey, and welcome to Game Talk. I'm your host, Sam and Beyond. Today I'm joined by Connor.
Hey, guys.
And Mike.
Hello.
And I've been wanting to do this topic since 2022 started, but this year has already been absolutely wild. But I do kind of want to take a pause and look around and see where we're at in the gaming industry from a bird's eye view and make some predictions about where we think we're going to go. And already I feel like, and yes, we've discussed this ad nauseum in the previous few episodes, but the name of the game right now seems to be acquisitions. And I think acquisitions are going to shake up the industry in a big way, like as they already have, right? But I think that's going to continue to happen through 2022. And I think it's an interesting topic to talk about because we're in a period of drastic change, I think. We're in the middle of it right now. And it does make me a little nervous, right? Because I feel like gaming has been so good as a whole lately. I'm talking PC, I'm talking Nintendo, I'm talking Sony, I'm talking Microsoft. And I'm afraid these drastic changes might lead to more bad than good. I don't know. That's just the pessimist in me talking. But I guess we can start off with the whole acquisition thing. We've got Microsoft acquiring Activision Blizzard. We've got Sony acquiring Bungie. We've got Nintendo staying all of it. What do you all make of this? And where do you think we're going to go as the year progresses?
I mean, short term, I think it's pretty cool. Obviously, I'm happy that, it was recently announced Call of Duty skipping a year. That's definitely, a direct result of the Microsoft acquisition.
It's not.
Right?
No.
It's not?
Yep. This was a decision solely made by Activision Blizzard because Call of Duty... Yeah, the developers just can't handle it anymore. They've been in a crunch for basically the better part of, 2 decades now? They've been pumping out...
It's a long time.
Call of Duty left and right every year, year after year. And this one's going to slip. And it's not even this one, right? The 2022 Call of Duty is still on track. But the 2023 one is already being delayed, which just goes to show how crazy it is, how far in advance these games are planned and developed. But no, I was surprised about that too. I thought it was Microsoft coming in and saying something, but the deal has not happened yet. This was a totally Activision centric decision.
Okay. But yeah, what I was going to say, what I was going to lead into at that point, but there are other points as well. I think it's going to be pretty cool for me personally in the short term. PlayStation is bringing all their games to PC, Xbox, Game Pass, basically 80% of the games I play, I get through Game Pass. I'm not, I'm paying $10 a month for most of my gaming, and that's an insane value. I just, Netflix was really cool in 2012. It's not a sustainable business model necessarily, so I wonder where we're going to end up.
Yeah, I wonder, like I said, right, we're talking about 2020 exclusively on this episode, so I think in 2020 we're going to be pretty fine overall, but like you said, where we're going to end up is kind of what I'm worried about. And I do think, and maybe the optimistic view of this is that, everyone has adopted the software first model, right? Everyone's just scrambling to get all of the pieces they can, and then disseminate the games everywhere they can to make the most money.
See, and I think that is smart business. I think that the software first model is right, because having, vertical integration is good for a company sometimes, but, having dedicated software developers and totally separate dedicated hardware developers is not necessarily a bad thing. It's worked pretty well in the PC space for a long time.
It has, and that just gets me thinking, right? We know Microsoft has been about that approach from day one, and now we see Sony starting to think hey, this is the way to go with how they're treating Bungie, and they're putting it on every platform, and they're cozying up with PC a lot, and it leads me to believe that maybe these big players like Sony and Microsoft are just trying to get as much content, quote unquote, as they can, snap it up, just so that when these games go everywhere, that they stand to profit the most. That's the most optimistic view of things, I think, but it's hard to know.
Yeah. The other view is are they doing this? Are they trying to sink their teeth into you?
Exactly.
Is this a gamble so that hey, you really liked Uncharted on PC, didn't you? Well, It's not there anymore.
Exactly.
You're gonna have to buy a PlayStation.
Is this like more of a walled garden, like Apple approach, right? Like, is this like we're going to get you into our system, and then you can get more of what you like only on our system?
I would say I'm almost certain that that's not the case with Xbox, and I think it's pretty unlikely that it's the case with PlayStation.
Yeah, if you asked me a year ago, I would have said that, yes, this is what PlayStation's doing. Now, I don't think so. Like, I definitely think they're following the get everything everywhere approach. Granted, they're not going to get there for a long, long time, but I see the trend now.
It just kind of feels like they finally, and this is something I've thought for a long time, is that, like, PlayStation does not compete with PC. Like, a lot of people that have a gaming PC, like, they were never going to buy a PlayStation. It just was not, it wasn't in the cards. Like, even myself, I have a PS4. I was not going to buy a new PlayStation. I went and I bought one used because there was one game I wanted to play. Like,
and we're seeing that reflected in, like, these sales. Like, these Sony exclusives coming to PC are doing quite well.
Yeah, God of War did very well.
So, God of War did well, Horizon did well, Days Gone, well, it was there.
I'm really curious how Uncharted's going to do, though, because that's especially a very old game at this point.
Well, here's the thing, like, Uncharted, I feel like most people know of Uncharted, right? Like, even if you don't play it on PlayStation.
Yeah, they saw the movie.
Yeah, that's another point to bring up, too. Like, the movie's out, and it's actually doing quite well, right? Like, general audiences are responding very favorably to it.
Really?
Which, by the way, I went and saw it. I was not very impressed. It was just like a generic, adventure movie. And, like, I think it was horrendously miscast. But people are responding to this movie. I mean, like, the Sony Pictures guy came out and already said this is the start of a great new movie franchise for us. So we're gonna get more Tom Holland Uncharted. We're gonna get more Marky Mark as Sully. Like, it's happening.
God, I've never wanted them to kill Sully off more. Like,
yeah,
Marky Mark is Sully.
That is the worst. Maybe the worst. Anyway,
also, spoilers. There were two. Really?
I might go see it.
Okay.
Well, I'm not gonna go see it. I might watch it when it comes to like a streaming service.
All right. Well, just know that there's 2 credit scenes.
Oh, that's not a spoiler. Okay.
I was going to tell you what they were, but now I won't.
Oh, I don't want you to tell me what they are.
Okay.
Yeah.
But yeah, that tangent aside.
Damn it.
Actually, that that is a tangent, but actually that kind of leads into another point. Games are really looking to breach multimedia, right? Like, Sony's looking to make The Last of Us and Uncharted, and I think Ratchet and Clank they already tried, and like looking, and they're apparently making a Twisted Metal TV show. Like, Sony
right?
in particular is trying to really branch out into TV and movies. Microsoft is doing something similar. There's a Halo TV show now.
Oh my god, yeah, they announced they're going to show Master Chief's face in the Halo show.
Nintendo's making a Mario movie, starring...
yeah, I feel like they kind of have to. I mean, Fortnite is this multimedia...
behemoth.
Yeah, so, like, they've seen that it exists, and, like, Mario's not competing with Fortnite. That's not the world we live in. But, they've got to be seeing that, like, this mass appeal is there, especially in this younger generation.
It's fascinating to me because, like, I think a decade or 2 ago, like, video games, broadly speaking, have tried to break into Hollywood, have tried to, make TV shows and movies. Not, granted, like, back before this streaming infrastructure is where it is now. But, like, movies have largely sucked, like video game movies have largely sucked, and video game adaptations outside of the game itself have largely been lackluster. But now I feel like maybe they're starting to, I guess, quote unquote, figure it out or something. But, like, I think now when these attempts are made, they're seeing a lot more successes and therefore a lot more money there, and they're trying to get more and more of these franchises that video game players know and love in front of everyone else.
There's already... I watched the trailer for Sonic 2, and it looks like... Sonic 1 was an okay movie. Sonic 2 looks like it actually, like, has a little bit of love for the Sonic franchise in a way that I'm really here for. And they've already, like, announced
they've already greenlit Sonic 3. They've, like... Yeah. It's kind of wild to me. And then, like,
the Sonic movies are on track to be more consistent than the Sonic video games.
I think, like, overall, like, yes, I want these adaptations to be good so that people fully appreciate, like, how good these things are that we've loved for years. But, like, at the same time, I'm just glad that competent things are being made now, right? Yeah. Like, I'm just glad that these characters are going to take the next step in, like, becoming, like, renowned, I think. Because like with someone like Mario, right? Like everyone knows who Mario is. You don't have to play video games to know who Mario is.
Yeah, I do wonder.
But for someone like,
wait, I don't know who's Mario.
Exactly, right? But but for someone like Nathan Drake, right? Like someone like obviously like I wasn't too big a fan of the Uncharted movie, but like it's doing well, and Tom Holland is probably the hottest star in Hollywood right now, right? Like, and the fact that people associate God. That people associate Tom Holland with Nathan Drake now, it can only be a good thing for the character of Nathan Drake, broadly speaking.
My question is like, is the value proposition like, is the value they're trying to get like, hey, we have this popular game character, maybe we'll like get value out of a movie as well because people like the character, or is the value like maybe people will see this movie and be interested in playing Uncharted games, and so we'll sell some PlayStations?
I think it's the opposite. I think they're trying to take these IP that have been proven extremely successful and just catapult them into the stratosphere, right? Like,
yeah. So it's not a marketing stunt. It's actually just trying to make a good movie that people want to see.
Yeah, it's trying to like, it's trying to get. I guess this is, maybe simplifying it, but it's trying to get Nathan Drake to that Mario level, knowability, right? Like, they want everyone to know who Nathan Drake is. They want everyone to know who Master Chief is, right? Like, I think that is the end goal here, because that ultimately results in the IP being more marketable.
Yeah.
And I think, that's definitely like a trend that's been happening more and more, right? And like we were going to get more movies, we're going to get more TV shows. So that's definitely something to keep an eye on. In addition to the acquisitions, I think that's probably the next biggest trend that I've been noticing. But another thing I kind of wanted to touch on was just to drill into these individual companies themselves. And companies talking about first party. We can talk about first party and PC. But I guess we can just start with PC. We've got the release of a mobile PC, right? Like a mobile PC console,
the Steam Deck. That's gonna be a game changer. I don't know if you guys have been watching the reviews and stuff. Like, they're gonna sell millions of these things,
and I think
it's not just gonna like the Steam Deck is going to affect the entire industry in a big way.
And it's fascinating to me because, like, I think Nintendo planted the seeds for this, right? Like, they saw
for sure.
Nintendo basically had the handheld market cornered, right? Other than mobile, which I guess, I for sake of argument, I'm going to separate mobile and handheld. But they had the handheld market cornered, and no one was challenging that. Sony basically gave up when they stopped supporting Vita and didn't create another handheld. Microsoft has never even attempted to do anything in that space.
You see,
and then Valve
where,
comes in.
That's the missing piece of the Steam Deck for me, is a partnership with Microsoft. And they're not going to do it because Valve does not like Microsoft.
Yeah.
But the fact that I can't play Game Pass on it is like the one thing that is missing.
See, I think from Microsoft and Phil Spencer's perspective, the mobile Xbox console is basically just using xCloud to stream it to a tablet or something. I think that's what he thinks, how he thinks of it at least.
Well, yeah, and like, the way I see it, Phil Spencer would love to get Game Pass on the Steam Deck.
He would love to get Game Pass everywhere.
Yeah, he'd love for native Game Pass to be on the Steam Deck. That's not the problem. The problem is, like, Valve's not going to want to, like, let you download your Game Pass games through Steam, which is what would have to happen. They're not going to let that happen.
Yeah. But, like, just the concept of a handheld PC console that has, been... I mean... It's not just, and they're not just slapping games on it, right? Like, all these games have been tested, like, all these games have been proven to run, right?
Mini games. You can theoretically play any game on Steam. They have a list of approved games and everything that
and
are
it's
for
like
sure going to work.
Gigantic list, right?
It's big, yeah. The Steam Deck is on its way. It's hard to categorize the Steam Deck because it is basically a console, right? But like, if you call it a console, the Steam Deck is launching with the single largest launch library of any console ever, like by a wide margin.
I mean, it's a console, but it's also like a PC. It's just a PC, right?
Yeah, you
like,
can plug it in and
it's a Switch. It's a PC Switch, right? Like, it's even going to have a dock, I believe, right? So
no, I think the legacy of the Steam Deck is going to be huge. And, I might be eating these words in a couple years, but I like to think, like, we've talked about it a few times, but like setting a minimum spec. Like, if Steam Deck is the spec that PC games want to run on their low settings at 30 frames per second, that's awesome. Like, that means that, like, somebody going in, if you want to build a PC, you, like, know that you need to at least match the Steam Deck. Like, or if you have a Steam Deck, you can be pretty sure your games are going to run. And that's just huge. And that's going to ripple. That's going to affect console games. That's going to affect major PC releases. I think that this thing is going to be huge.
And I think, like, it just sort of hit me. This does sort of tie into the theme we've been seeing about, like, just getting games everywhere. The Steam Deck is going to get games into the hands of so many more people. And this
isn't a new strategy for Valve. Valve's been trying to bring bring PC gaming to the living room for 10 years now with, big picture. They tried to do the Steam machines. They did the Steam Link, which everybody likes to pretend the Steam Link was a failure. That's just not true. The Steam Link hardware became redundant because smart TVs got so big. Mm-hmm. Like, a lot of TVs have Steam Link built into them and stuff like that. Like, I still use Steam Link pretty regularly. I think it's incredible.
But yeah, I think it is interesting. Like, this is another bullet point to support the theory that, like, games are just going to be everywhere now, I think.
The fact that you're going to be able to have your Steam Deck and you can play God of War.
I know, right?
And Uncharted and Halo and, like, any PC, Factorio all on the same device.
Yeah, and I think this segues well, because I think that's the big innovation right now in PC, like the mobile PC push, right? And like, of course, the 40 series graphics cards are given, like, they're going to be bonkers, but I don't really know if we need to touch on that, because I think that's evident. But I want to go in the polar opposite direction now and talk about Nintendo, right? Like, Nintendo are still just doing Nintendo things, right? In this radically shifting landscape where all these big players are making huge unorthodox moves that we would not have seen coming a few years ago. Nintendo seems like it's just staying the course in the face of all of this. No acquisition talk at all from Nintendo. They're not even releasing a new console anytime soon, right? And the Switch is getting kind of up there in age.
I mean, the Switch came out I guess it's 5 years old now. Yeah.
It's fascinating to me because, like, Nintendo is playing an entirely different game from everyone else, and they're winning that game, right? Like, they're doing insane numbers.
Like I just said, the Steam Deck is going to sell really well. The Steam Deck is not going to sell like the Switch sells.
Absolutely not. Yeah,
it's a premium product still. Like, at its cheapest, $400. You can get a Switch for $200.
I just do think it's really interesting because I think, like, early last year, I don't know if it was around this time, but, like, there was the talk of, like, a Switch successor was, like, at a fever pitch, right? Like, we thought the Switch OLED was going to be like a Switch Pro or something like that and have, like, 4K capability and all of that. None of that ended up being true. And it turns out Nintendo is still thinking of the Switch as their main machine for the next few years, right? Like, we talked about...
I suspect the Switch will be good at least 7 years. That's, like,
I think so.
Console length these days, isn't it? So
7 years. It came out in 2017. That makes it, 2024? And they're planning on supporting Mario Kart 8 till the end of 2023, so that lines up very nicely, I think.
Yeah, it does. For them to release Mario Kart 8 Deluxe on the Switch, too.
Right? Like, Mario Kart 8 Deluxe Remastered.
The course, but, like, supporting Mario Kart 8 the way that they have been is not really staying the course for Nintendo. That's actually kind of crazy. Releasing a DLC for your bundle that came with the old DLC.
No, like, so let's talk about how Nintendo has changed, because they have changed, right? Like, they are trying to push their online services, right? They have a subscription service now. I want to give credit where
credit is due. The newer Nintendo games... Online has worked in the past few Nintendo titles I've seen. I don't know if it worked in Mario Party super well. I didn't look, but, like,
it has.
3D World's online play was fine.
It has worked great in Mario Party. I've played it online often.
So maybe, like, I don't think that it's because they're charging for it. I don't want to believe that, but maybe, like, it did get better.
I mean, but, like, here's the thing, like, in 2022, you either invest in your online infrastructure or you die, right? Like, I don't, like, even... Like, Nintendo can't keep being dinosaurs in that regard forever, right? Like, they have to adopt, like, the online age. And I feel like they're doing that, and they've created some sort of membership/subscription with the Nintendo Switch Online Pass and the expansion pack that has been, was controversial when it was first announced, but I feel like overall has been very successful, and they keep adding value to it. Like, they're saying all these game DLCs that you would have to pay individually for, you could... get the expansion pass, and then that's included with it. That's actually kind of huge.
Yeah, I was a pretty major detractor, and I still have no intention of upgrading, but I don't think that it's like a terrible deal anymore. I do think that Nintendo is still absolutely backwards on their games preservation stance, and they are doubling down on that every single day.
They are, and I don't think that'll ever change. I think that their stance on that is so ingrained into their culture
miserable.
and
It's
mindset
so
that
stupid.
is one thing that I think will never, ever, ever change. But
I didn't know this recently, but Nintendo, I think it's the ESA, is that what it's called?
Yeah.
Whatever it is, it's a huge contributor to why like classic video games are not available in public libraries.
Oh, yeah, and they support that group, right?
Yeah, and they're very, very against it, and that's just insane. Like, nobody is paying for Nintendo Switch Online so that they can play the original Super Mario Brothers. No one is doing that.
I would
So,
honestly, I would push back against that. There are several people that, like, who aren't exactly tech savvy, who aren't...
Super Mario Bros. 3, sure, but not the original Super Mario Brothers.
I don't know, man. Like, people see that it's on there and they're like, oh, I remember my childhood. I'm going to get that. Like, it's as simple as that. Like, there's...
Yeah, it's just insane. Like...
I mean, here's the thing. Nintendo wouldn't be doing this if they knew they couldn't get away with it. And they can.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So, and they are.
Getting away with it. That's the worst part.
It sucks. I need it to stop, because I'm not even like complaining that I don't get these games for free. That's not the problem. It's that, like, especially the way they're doing it on Switch, their curation is insane. It's like there's so many good games on the NES and I cannot play them legally.
Yeah. And I think, like, that's Nintendo's strategy. I think they're just going to drip feed you games via their online pass, right? Whereas, like, obviously, like, they could release probably like 10 a month forever and still, like, be good for the duration of the Switch's life cycle. But they're going to drip feed you like one NES game every few months, and that's what it's going to be, which is a shame.
It's a huge shame. Yeah.
But I think overall Nintendo, how I would characterize them, right now and going forward into 2022 is just staying the course in the face of all these acquisitions and stuff, but more heavily investing in, like, maybe investing is the wrong term, but adding more value to the Nintendo Switch Online program, because they now see the value in these subscription services, right? Like PlayStation Plus, Game Pass, and now this Nintendo Switch Online Pass. Like, these things are like the major sources of revenue for these companies, right? Like, these things are going to generate billions of dollars. And
I do think it's interesting to have a subscription model that's just that's mainly giving you DLC, though. I think that's very interesting because
it's a new approach. I don't think it's been done before, but that's what I love about Nintendo, and hate, I guess. But, like, whenever they do something, it's such a unique take on it that you don't know whether to be impressed or, like, disgusted.
Yeah, I can't help but wonder if people would have been less mad about, like, the DLC, like, craze, in, like, the early 2010s and stuff. I wonder if people would, like, if it would have been an easier pill to swallow as a subscription service.
Yeah, it might have been, right? But, like, here's the thing. Like, they're also... So the value from Nintendo Switch Online comes to me in, like, DLC, retro games, and online functionality, right? Online functionality shouldn't cost a cent, but, like, the retro games and the DLC can be seen as really valuable to a lot of people, I think.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, look at how many people are playing Super Mario 64 on Twitch through their Switch right now. It's a pretty big number. Or at least how many people are watching people play Super Mario 64 through Nintendo Online on their Switch.
Yeah. And the brilliant thing about Nintendo is Nintendo, I think, does nostalgia better than any other company, right? Like, other than maybe, like, something like Disney, right? And the brilliant
Disney's Nintendo's kind of taking a card out of Disney's.
Well, I was gonna say, like, the brilliant thing about
the Vault stuff,
Nintendo's strategy is that every time they add a new console to their virtual console list on Nintendo Switch, they basically open up a new silo of nostalgia, right? Like, there was always a generation of people growing up on SNES or NES or N64 who are just waiting for a chance to relive that era. And every time Nintendo adds a new console, I feel like it just skyrockets their subscription base. probably.
They've kind of played all their cards there, though. Like, I don't think the Switch could run GameCube games, so that's not going to happen. Well, it emulated Super Mario Sunshine, didn't it?
I think it could run GameCube games. I don't know beyond that. It gets kind of iffy, but like, I feel like by the time they still haven't even tapped into their handhelds, right? Like there's so much for them to
insane. You have your handheld and I can't play my Game Boy games on it?
So
mind-boggling.
Yeah, Nintendo's, I feel like, at least in terms of this strategy of like retro games via subscription service, have a lot left in the tank. So we'll see where that goes. But yeah, so that's Nintendo in a nutshell. Let's move on to Sony. So Sony is interesting because like they have willingly demonstrated that, to me at least, that they're changing pretty quickly as a company, right? They're putting Destiny and Bungie's future titles everywhere, and they're releasing their huge exclusives on PC. And rumor has it that like we're not going to have to wait like a year or two now for Sony exclusives to come out on PC. That time gap is going to shrink more and more, and I bet probably not in 2022, but soon after we will see day and date releases on PlayStation and PC.
I hope so. Because I think they could have got me with Horizon Forbidden West. I think. They could have got me on that one if it was available to me.
Yeah, and I think they're planting the seeds in the PC audience's mind, right? Like, PC audiences have gotten a taste of Horizon, they've gotten a taste of God of War, right? And now that Sony knows that there's an audience there, like, I feel like a release day and date on that platform as well as PlayStation will just have it explode on both platforms.
You know what my question is, though?
Yeah.
What does a day and date PlayStation 5 and PC release cost?
That's a great question, yeah. So,
because $70 for a PS5 game, people on Steam are very set in their ways about the way they're going to buy a game. Like, controversial pricing causes review bombing constantly on Steam. So, like, I think if Sony tried to release a $70 game on Steam, I think people would riot. I think there would be fires in the streets. Like,
honestly, yeah.
Yeah, it is an interesting conundrum, right? Because they what if they release it for $70 on PS5 and $60 on PC? It wouldn't really make a whole lot of sense.
That's also not a good idea, right?
Yeah. So, like, I don't know. This whole $70 price point obsession is kind of strange to me, right? Like, I don't like. I suppose like with inflation and stuff, it makes sense, but like it's not sticking. It really isn't.
Yeah. My beef with it is that the math doesn't check out, Sony. Like, yes, games are more expensive to make now. That is all true. Absolutely, that's very true. They also sell so many more copies than they ever have before, and like, it costs you nothing to sell a copy of a game. So
yeah.
Like,
so that
the economy of scale there.
That is an interesting conundrum for what might happen when what I could see happening is that it's a $70 release on PC, huge backlash, and then they drop it by $10. Like, I could see that happening. Like,
yeah,
because another thing we've seen is that these big companies are being more and more responsive to outrage. No, I guess outrage is a strong word, but like feedback.
Yeah, controversy and feedback. Yeah, I will say though, like, $70 PC port does make sense to me though. Like, a PC game is harder to make than a PS5 game. Like, PS5 game doesn't need a massive settings menu where you can like tweak every little thing. Like,
most PS5 games have 2, maybe 3 tops graphical settings. PC has like almost an infinite array of settings. Yeah. So,
and I think that's the superior settings menu. Like, if I had that on my console, I would use it. But
then it defeats the purpose of a console, really.
Sorta. I mean, you could hide the menu. Like, I don't care if I have to put in the Konami code to get to the menu as long as it's there. But yeah, it definitely, and they've been doing well with it. Like, God of War settings, I was fine with. Everything was there that I needed.
Yeah, I definitely see the relationship between PlayStation and PC becoming more and more intertwined as the year progresses and beyond. And the other big thing for Sony I wanted to discuss is VR. So Sony
they showed the PSVR 2, didn't they?
They've shown the PSVR 2 headset looks very sleek and futuristic, and the spec sheet on that thing is highly impressive. Inside out tracking, eye tracking, haptics, foveated rendering, just a list of cutting edge VR features.
I wonder. So here's the real question: can I plug my PSVR 2 into my PC?
I imagine.
I know I'll be able
at
to.
launch.
I'm 100% certain I'll be able to. I just wonder if Sony is going to give me the tools to do so, or if I'm going to have to download them from somewhere else.
I imagine official support will not be there at launch, but we'll see, right? Like, they've been changing their relationship with PC a lot. But I think eventually, I could see that happening, right? Like,
I'd buy a port of Planet Astrobot right now. Or not, what was it called? Astrobot Rescue? Was that what it was called?
Rescue Mission, yeah.
Rescue Mission. I would buy that.
I mean, you've got to think
immediately.
Team Asobi is working on the next proper Astrobot entry for PSVR 2. That has to be happening, right?
Yeah, especially after how amazing Astrobot, what was it called? The
Astro's
Playroom.
Yes, Astro's Playroom for PS5, the pack-in game, is incredible. That team,
that's a system seller almost. That looks amazing.
That team, this is a spicy take. That team is rapidly approaching like Nintendo caliber of like platform design.
I'll give it to you. They
really get it. They really get it. They know what they're doing. And
Astrobot's Playroom may be the most compelling PS5 game for me right now.
It's a shame though, because it is short, right? It's like. Yeah. It's not exactly a demo, but you're not going to spend like 10 plus hours on it.
No, it's just something to fool around
with. But yeah,
yeah.
I mean, I do find myself going back to that game just because I love how it plays and I love the attention to detail in that game.
I love a cheery platformer like that.
Exactly,
and it's so different from like, you've heard me whine on this podcast about your first party PlayStation games and stuff and how, like first party PlayStation syndrome, how there's so much cruft and everything. Astrobot doesn't have any of that. Astrobot knows what it is, and it does it to, like, nearly perfection.
Astrobot feels like a Nintendo game. Like, it really does. And that's a compliment. You don't have your
stupid ham-fisted RPG elements, which are my main beef with modern games.
Yeah, I mean, I can get those complaints, but, like, I don't know. Like, I feel like an RPG, if a game is an RPG, it should have RPG elements.
If a game is an RPG, it should have RPG elements. It's when it's God of War that it shouldn't have RPG
elements. That's fair, yeah. But
it's when they're tacked on just to like have it on the back of the box or something.
I could see a release for PSVR 2 later this year, and that is definitely a day one purchase for me because they've pretty much revealed everything.
What do you think it's going to cost?
I think
it's probably the biggest competitor. It's going to be more than a Quest, I feel like.
I would say, gosh, if you'd asked me to put one number on it, I'd say 400 or 500. Maybe 500. I would say 500. Because, like, look at that spec sheet, dude. Like, it's insane.
But look at the Quest 2, like, its main competitor.
Yeah. But here's the thing. Like, you're going to have a PS5 to use this, presumably, right? Like, we don't know.
Which is why I think it should be cheaper. Like,
it
doesn't have a computer in it.
Yeah, I don't know, man. Like, I would love for it to be cheaper, don't get me wrong, but I just don't see it. Like, it just seems like such a... It seems like
a premium product.
Cutting-edge VR product.
But and VR prices have to come down, like, if it's going to really enter the mainstream. Like, you can't have the $1,000 Valve Index was never going to be the mainstream VR headset. Like...
But that's... One aspect of Sony's overall strategy I really enjoy is that they're the ones... really pioneering VR, right? Like, obviously, like, Facebook is too, but, like, it's Facebook, right?
Valve are the ones really pioneering VR. Like,
yeah.
Half-Life Alyx is the VR title.
Okay, that's fair. That's fair. But Sony is investing a lot of first-party resources into PSVR 2. Like, there's going to be a New Horizon exclusive game for PSVR 2.
Of the big three, like Xbox, Nintendo, PlayStation, so PlayStation's the one putting it all in, you know.
I guess that's what I meant, right?
But like, I would still say that Valve is way more in on VR than PlayStation. They have their premium hardware. They released the first Half-Life game since Half-Life 2.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. I definitely come from more of a...
That's exactly as big as a Horizon, if not bigger.
Yeah, that's totally fair. I come from more of a console perspective, so that's why you guys need to check me on that when I make these statements. But
yeah, no.
But yeah, definitely from a console perspective, Sony's leading the way in VR, and
they're the only ones that are even interested.
I know, right? It's crazy to me.
It's wild to me that Microsoft did Windows Mixed Reality. and like none of that even touched Xbox, like, and it's not even come up for the Series X. That's
it's
so
just
weird
like
to
a
me.
difference. So it's like all three of these guys are taking a gamble, right? Like Sony believes that VR will be a major component in gaming in the future, right? Like it's not going to take over your regular gaming, but like it'll stand alongside it as like a new way to play games. But Nintendo and Microsoft don't agree with that. And I guess we'll just have to see whose vision for the future ends up being correct.
Windows mixed reality is kind of in a sorry state these days too. Like, I have my Lenovo Explorer that I've had. You know, that's the only VR headset I've ever owned. It's old. It's beat up. You cannot repair it. Like, you know, I've stepped on the cable a bunch of times. That cable cannot be replaced easily. I don't know if I could open the headset up and replace it. I don't think so. And like, there's only one Windows mixed reality headset like that has modern features, and it's a the HP Reverb G2, I think. And it's not a terrible, like, it's a $600 Valve Index competitor basically. That's a hard sell. Like, the $600 for that VR's in a weird place right now. It's kind of,
it is in a weird place, and I guess another reason to qualify that statement I made about Sony and VR is that I think Sony is trying to make it not in a weird place. They're trying to really push for it to be in like a mainstream thing.
I sincerely hope, and this is a long shot, Sony has to push back against the Facebook metaverse nonsense. Like, they have to see that, like, this is not what VR is.
Yeah,
like, VR is not a locked down.
See, that's another interesting
like,
dimension to this discussion, because, like, I feel like metaverse has almost poisoned VR for a lot of people.
In a big way, in like the public eye, like everybody sees VR as the metaverse, and it's poisoned with like Facebook charging you to look at street art and telling you it's a good thing. Like,
it's so frustrating for someone who really wanted VR to be further than it is right now. Yes,
they tanked like $500 billion.
Yeah, it's
$500 million.
No, I think it's billion with a B.
Billion.
Yeah.
It's billion with a B.
Billion with a B?
Yeah.
They're hemorrhaging money with the switch to Meta. Yeah, I would love to see the metaverse be the thing that tanks Facebook.
Metaverse, like, I've seen, and I've dove into, like, the scene and tried to see what's so big about it, and half the stuff that people are doing in the metaverse, people have been doing since, like, Second Life.
Yeah, it's just bad VR.
I think Sony,
it's just terrible VR chat.
I think with PSVR 2, Sony really needs to make a statement, and how do they do that? I think they
just
really
make good
dedicate
first-party single-player games.
They dedicate first-party support to this thing, right? We get the next Astro, and it's incredible. We get Horizon in VR, and it's not just a demo; it's a full-length game, right? Like, this is what they need to do to prove VR, right?
Yeah.
And I get that they're kind of, I imagine they're trepidatious about doing this. Like, I imagine they're risk averse to an extent, right? Because they really tried to support Vita with first party games when it first came out, but then nothing happened, and then the first party support
Vita had a lot
stopped.
of issues that PSVR does not have, though. Like,
in the sense, also in the sense that it was competing with like DS, right? Like,
yeah,
but like
PSVR 2's competition is not as steep, I feel like.
It is not, right? And the VR audience is still, I think, ripe for the taking, right? Like, VR is not mainstream by any stretch of the imagination right now. Even though, like, when we first talked about VR, like, years ago on this podcast, I would have thought it would have been mainstream by now. Clearly, you know, my estimations were too optimistic, right?
Yeah,
but I still think VR very much has the potential to go mainstream. And I
agree. And I mean, mainstream isn't the word, like,
mainstream, I guess, on the level of like a first-party Sony exclusive, right? Like, we're talking like 10 to 20 million sales, something like that.
Yeah, so like, yeah, my thought is like, VR is mainstream in that, like, you know someone that has an Oculus Quest 2. Like, no one doesn't know someone that has a VR headset anymore, I feel like. But like, it'll be really mainstream when it's at like that PS4 level where, like, if you see someone walking down the street, you could probably talk to them about it. Like, most, you know, people have played PS4. Like,
yeah, I think obviously we're still a ways from that happening, but I do think Sony is dedicating the appropriate resources to try and make that happen. And I'm really happy about that. I really, really hope PSVR 2 succeeds.
It's just, I think the VR's biggest problem is that we're like, and I guess VR is a good thing to talk about as a 2022 gaming checkup. that we've kind of sandwiched in here. But the big VR releases are so few and far between. Like, the last massive VR game was Half-Life Alyx, and that was in, like, 2020, right? Like,
it's because, well, it's another thing. It's all about the risk, right? Like, these developers who make these great games want to keep making great, regular games and not take a gamble on a VR game, right? Like, it's all about just taking the plunge. And, like, no one's really been willing to do that. But I think Sony is willing to do that.
There are other huge challenges here, too, like streamability. Streamers do stream VR games and stuff. Like, I know Vinny Vsauce, whatever, streams VR and stuff. And a few other people. But streaming VR is much more difficult than streaming any other game. You have to have a much nicer setup. And, like, even then, I can't watch footage of someone playing a VR game. I get sick.
It's too jarring. Yeah.
It's too jarring. And I can play VR just fine. I consider myself having a decently strong stomach for it.
Yeah, I don't think a game has to be streamable to be successful.
It certainly
definitely helps. It definitely helps.
I don't think any individual game has to be. But I think to have a whole platform that is difficult to stream makes it hard.
Yeah. And because, I don't know, like, I feel like there might be, like, what if Sony develops a solution, or maybe not even Sony, just someone develops a solution where, like, a Twitch VR app, right? Like, wouldn't that be great? Then you'd have to have, like, obviously a VR headset to fully get that experience, but, like, at least it's something.
There's also, but yeah, I'm just thinking, like, this was a really roundabout way to do it. There are a lot of small VR games that are really good, and I know they're really good, and I still haven't played them. Like,
it's just that barrier to entry, right?
I Expect You to Die 2 came out, but I want to play it, but I also look over at my somewhat beat up headset. Last time I plugged a pair of headphones into it, they made a loud screeching sound that was very upsetting.
Yeah, when I talk to my, like, non-game savvy friends, I tell them about VR, I tell them stuff like, we're still in, like, the iPhone 1 or 2 era, right? Like, this stuff is just getting started, right?
It does feel exactly like, I was thinking about the early iPhone commercials the other day where it was like the dude sitting at the table and he's like, all of his friends think he's a loser because he just says, I don't need an iPhone. All I do is make calls and send text. I don't need one. And they all are like playing Angry Bird or whatever on their iPhone and using the calculator. And that's kind of how a lot of, like, the Super Bowl commercials and stuff feel to me. Like, they're acting like everybody has a VR headset in an attempt to get everyone to get one.
It's still early days for VR, and my fear is that, like, this is where it ends, right? Like, I know that's hyperbolic, but, like, I fear that the wrong choices are made, like, Metaverse becomes the face of VR, and then VR never goes anywhere, right?
I don't think that'll happen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's just the pessimistic view, but, like, I do think Valve, Sony, these companies
titans of industry.
These companies are really, putting their best foot forward to try and make it happen. I just wish Microsoft and Nintendo was on board too, because then I think the process would be a lot easier. But
I am okay with Nintendo not being on board. I mean, they're on board.
I mean, they're slightly on board, right? Like, they had like they had
the Google Cardboard equipment.
Exactly, yeah.
Which is fine.
It was an experiment for them, right? Like, Nintendo always dabbles in all these different things, but, like, for them to actually throw their weight behind it would be something else entirely.
It was such a bold play for them to make, like, all of Breath of the Wild playable in VR. What an insane thing to do.
I don't know if you're...
I'm not joking. This is a real thing. You can put on the Toy-Con goggles and you can play Breath of the Wild in them.
Is it, like, first person or, like...
No, it's still third person, but it's like the game is 3D.
Oh, kind of like Astrobot. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't think you can turn your head. I think it's actually just 3D. I don't actually know.
Yeah, I don't know about that.
Yeah, it's just, what an insane thing for them to do.
Yeah. Well, that's Nintendo
and Smash
for
Bros. You can do it in Smash Bros. Too.
I can't even imagine that. That's so strange.
I'm like 99% sure you can do it in Smash Bros.
But yeah, I think Sony, that wraps up. Like, I definitely wanted to touch on VR as it relates to Sony, because from a console perspective, they're really trying to make that happen. And I hope it does happen, right? Like, I think late 2022 or early 2023, we're going to see this headset come out, and then we shall see. And last but not least, Microsoft, right? So Microsoft, perhaps the most fascinating one, just from it, by virtue of what they're doing, right? They've purchased Bethesda. They've purchased Activision Blizzard. They're surely to purchase someone big again soon, right? And the question becomes, like, what's next, right? Like, obviously this is an effort to just get everything under the umbrella of Game Pass. And I think what's next is to then try and launch Game Pass on everything conceivably possible, including Nintendo, including PlayStation, right? I don't know how successful they will be in approaching Japanese companies like Nintendo and Sony with this, but that is obviously, I think, their goal, right?
If they release a Linux, all they would have to do is release a Linux app for Game Pass.
I mean,
Like,
another thing,
and they could use Proton. Proton's open source.
another prediction I'm going to make, I think you're going to have an Xbox app on your smart TVs, right? And I think
for streaming, xCloud.
yeah, for xCloud, right? And you just that is your
that's like the safest prediction I've ever heard.
Right? Yeah, that's like your Xbox. Like I could see that happening probably fall this year, right?
I could see it happening tomorrow.
It's tomorrow, yeah.
Drop that. Like, yeah, that could happen any day now.
Which, you know, like, is very cool in the sense that, like, yes, it gets gaming everywhere, but, like, it also makes me personally a little sad because I feel like it's another step away from dedicated consoles.
xCloud does not feel like a replacement for consoles to me.
I think Microsoft really and truly wants it to be, but I agree with you. I don't think it is.
The infrastructure is just not even close. Like, I mean, I guess that's it, right? Like, I will be okay with getting rid of dedicated consoles once the infrastructure is so good that it's indistinguishable. I don't think that's physically possible, not with current technology, because, like...
Yeah. It's just too location-based.
You get a certain amount of latency just for how many miles of cable there is, you know? Like, that's unavoidable. That is literally, like, your limitation there is the speed of light. We cannot do better than that. So...
Yeah, I don't see it happening anytime soon. I do think Microsoft is trying to make it happen.
Like, unless they want to put a data center in every town in the continental United States, it's never going to work here.
You know what's wild? That I bet you that's something Microsoft has thought about. Like, I'm not even kidding.
If they're going to do that, I'm fine with it. Like, if they're going to give me an Xbox, like, you know, xCloud that works, I'm pretty happy with it. It's just not feasible for me right now.
Yeah. Obviously, yeah, xCloud is going to become more prevalent. Game Pass is going to be on everything, right? Like, Game Pass is going to be on your TV, probably. Do we think, in some capacity, right? Like, because we know, actually, we could have touched on this with PlayStation, but PlayStation is making Spartacus, right? That's the code name. I don't know if we've discussed this on the show before, but Spartacus is a Game Pass equivalent. So, PlayStation is making a Game Pass, right? And it begs the question, right, with Sony grabbing Bungie, Microsoft grabbing Call of Duty, Activision, all of that. If, like, in the near future, when Spartacus comes out is on PlayStation, Sony and Microsoft reach some sort of deal where they have, like, a limited version of Game Pass on PlayStation, a limited version of Spartacus on Xbox, so that those channels will be opened up.
That seems unlikely to me.
Unlikely?
Unlikely.
I disagree. I think we're heading in that direction, right? Like,
I'm not gonna take as hard of a stance on it as I would have a few years ago, but I don't think. I don't know. I just don't think Sony's bringing enough to the table for Xbox to make any concessions.
I don't. How do you figure that? Sony exclusives are massive.
Yeah,
they're not as massive as Call of Duty, obviously, but like that's still like tons of games.
So when you said limited, I was thinking like, okay, they'll let you have Destiny and like. Maybe some of the little ones, like, but they're not going to put Uncharted on Xbox. But, like...
I don't know. Like, I feel like we could see Sony first-party exclusives on Xbox via that service, and Microsoft first-party exclusives on Game Pass on PlayStation. Like, I think...
wild, because at that point, it's just everybody buying a Steam machine, basically. Because the consoles are already nearly, like, identical hardware-wise.
Yeah, so, I don't know. Like, I think...
If they're identical software-wise, like, what's the point, even?
I think
Why even sell a console?
I don't know. Like, I feel like these brands have established themselves and now they just are trying to get everywhere. I think that's the play right now.
Maybe.
Yeah.
I mean, I long have said that, like, hardware sales are dumb. Like, you're selling these consoles at a loss. Like, why not just sell the software everywhere you can? I would just be so shocked if they suddenly realized that 20 years later.
Well, here's the thing. That's been the established paradigm forever now, right? And now we're at the point where, like, these boxes exist, but don't technically have to. But people associate, you know, PlayStation with... People associated, like, Uncharted and Last of Us and Ghost of Tsushima, Horizon, all these games with PlayStation, right? Like, and... PlayStation, you have a very specific image of that box, right? Same with Microsoft and Xbox, right? Those those associations don't necessarily have to be there. It's just been ingrained in how we consume video games. But, you know, with where technology is at and where we're at, and like with software being king and everything, like that doesn't necessarily have to be the case anymore. It's just that's how it was, so that's how it is, I think.
Yeah. I'd be shocked if they see it that way. I agree with you.
I think they're starting to. I think that we've gotten evidence of that, seeing it that way. But yeah, I don't know if in like 2022 we'll see Game Pass on PlayStation or Spartacus on Xbox, but I
don't think anything
like
it's that'll
happening.
be happening until the ink dries and Call of Duty is being held ransom. Like,
I think it's
so
and
2024.
Another really interesting discussion to be had. So we didn't touch on this earlier in the episode, but when we mentioned it, but the reason that 2023's Call of Duty was delayed was because that Vanguard underperformed so badly that they want to spend the extra time to polish the next Call of Duty.
Dude, it was a bad year to be a first-person shooter fan in 20.
And just for some perspective, Call of Duty Vanguard was still the best-selling game in 2021.
Oh my god,
easily! Like and you know what number 2 was? Call of Duty Black Ops Cold War, right?
Really?
So Call of Duty is still king, right?
Oh
but the fact that they're number 1, but their sales internally must have been much lower than what they thought they would have been to make this move. So that, and I think, I don't know, like, I imagine a 2023 where a COD doesn't come out in the fall. Gamers are looking for...
Call of Duty will still be the best-selling game of 2023?
I don't think so, right? Because, like, Modern Warfare 2 will come out this fall, and then, like, I guess I would imagine Modern Warfare 2 would be in, like, the top 10 for next year. But, like, I think that number 1 spot for the first time in decades has an opportunity, well, not decades, right? Because like GTA, when it first came out, obviously, probably. I would have to check the data, but I would imagine to be Call of Duty. But like something other than GTA or Call of Duty has the opportunity to be the best-selling game of 2023.
Did Minecraft ever beat Call of Duty?
I don't know. I'm not sure.
That's a weird one. Yeah, I never really thought about those two.
But the point I was trying to get at is that like we might be seeing like a wane in Call of Duty, right? Like, because even though Vanguard was a broken mess, I totally expected people to still lap it up, right? And obviously they did, but the sales are down so much that they've decided to delay Call of Duty, which I can't stress enough how gargantuan of a decision that is, right? Like, that is huge news. Like, that is so much...
That's unthinkable.
That's like $1 billion move right there. Like $1 billion+ decision has been made to do that. So... times are changing is all I'm saying. Times are changing, and it's a fascinating time to be into the games industry. Like, my word. Like, I've been following this since I was like obviously a young kid, and I've never
youngin'.
Yeah, a youngin, and I've not been.
We're here jaded.
I've never been more interested in the games industry than I have been right now. Like, it's crazy right now.
I don't know. I think I've gotten more jaded over the years.
I mean, that's a fair thing to be jaded, but I think just from the perspective of like how the industry is changing so rapidly while we're getting these amazing games is just, I don't know, it excites me a lot, personally.
Yeah, there's a lot to be excited about in gaming now.
A lot to be excited about, a lot to be fearful of too, honestly.
Oh yeah.
But
I'm gonna have to, I still spend like most of my time playing older video games, but I'll be coming out of that tomorrow.
Coming out of your hibernation.
What will almost certainly be the biggest video game of the year.
Probably the biggest video game of the generation already. Like, I'm not even...
maybe of the decade.
Maybe of all time. Like, and this is not hyperbole, right? Elden Ring comes out tomorrow on PC, the day after on console.
It did. Like, I don't think this is going to shake things up from a business sense, but it did occur to me that it's kind of wild for us to record a state of gaming. Like, we're almost doing a, like, pre and post Elden Ring. Like, what was the world like?
Right. No, like, I almost want to say I'm joking, but I bet Phil's on a plane to Japan right now to acquire From Software. I know, right? Like, someone's going to get From Software. Like, let's just be realistic.
If they don't buy From Software, they're going to poach Miyazaki. Like,
someone is going to get From Software, which I do not want that to happen. They're a perfect crown jewel in this entire mess. And like, every game they put out, I feel like almost every single game they put out since they've started making Dark Souls has been a masterpiece. But this, Elden Ring has a 97 on Metacritic right now. That's like Breath of the Wild tier, right? Like that's
Breath of the Wild, I think, was a 96. Like
it might have, yeah, it might be a 90. So this game is, like, obviously we shouldn't just base everything off of review scores, right? But like when something has an aggregate score that high, that tells you that there is something here, right? Like, and reviewers are already saying like this is, the perfect fusion between Souls and Breath of the Wild, and they're saying that like this is game design on another level, and this is one of the best games ever made. I'm just super excited to finally devour this game.
Yeah,
and
work is going to drag on. I am one of the blessed few who will be playing this on PC tomorrow, and it comes to us at 6 p.m. Eastern.
Yeah,
Everyone else has to wait.
I'm gonna have to wait until I am taking Friday off, and I'm probably only going to play Elden Ring on Friday.
Yeah.
But good lord, that game. Like, obviously I knew it would be a good game, like an excellent game. I knew it would be superb, but just seeing that materialize in like these perfect scores and like people gushing about it the way they are is just like, it's surpassed my wildest dreams. Like,
I also like seeing all these people like, yeah, I'm 50 hours into Elden Ring and stuff. Like,
it's a massive game.
Yeah, Dark Souls is not that long. Like,
yeah.
Unless you die a bunch, which I do, but like...
But I've also seen that, like, if you want, you can skip anywhere from, like, 85 to 90% of the entire game.
Oh my god.
Which is
that's
just...
unhealthy for somebody like me who typically does do that.
I mean, it's like the Zelda... It's the same thing with Breath of the Wild. With Breath of the Wild, you could just, like, walk into the castle and finish the game. Yeah, obviously, you'd have to be really good to do that, but, like, it's possible.
But I am.
Come on. But Elden Ring seems like a similar deal, right? Like, but with Elden Ring though, like I'm going to absorb as much of that world as I can. Like there's going to be so many secrets to discover, so much stuff to explore in that game. And it's not going to be like rote AAA like side quests. This is Miyazaki we're talking about. We're basically talking about Dark Souls on like another scale. And that excites me so much. And this game, much like Breath of the Wild had influence on the games that followed, I very much feel already that Elden Ring is going to influence the games for many years to come. I can tell it's that kind of game. So, honestly,
I'm still cautiously optimistic. I'm not like shaking in anticipation, but I do expect it to be good.
I think honestly, next week we could just have probably a dedicated episode to our thoughts on Elden Ring.
Breath of the Wild.
Yeah. I think
we'll
that's
have to talk
appropriate.
about it.
Yeah.
This weekend, but yeah, I could see that.
But okay,
are you going to be playing it, Mike?
No.
Well, Mike will
I'm just going to be discluded.
Mike will have a valuable perspective of someone who doesn't care about this stuff, and I'm not being I'm being serious when I say that. Like that is a valuable perspective to have.
I don't like From Software games.
Ooh.
Yeah.
I'm
contrarian.
Everyone says that this game is even getting the non-From Software fans, so that's something to consider. But
yeah, I cautiously say this. I think it's easier. Like
it's more accessible. That's what I've read. Because apparently it's still really difficult, but it's so huge now that like if you're stuck on a boss or an area, you can just like go to an entirely different area. And then and
Dark Souls has always had an easy mode. Its easy mode was just casting, and it was mechanically
and co-op.
easy.
There's co-op too, right? Yeah. Like you can summon a friend. Like
I believe this game's co-op is better than
if you have hangups about the difficulty in these games, there are very well defined ways around that. Just FYI, if you think you'd be interested otherwise, but
I'm not going to have hangups about the difficulty.
Yeah, I wasn't necessarily talking to you, just like the audience in general.
Yeah, we know you're too weenie to play Dark Souls, Mike.
I am. I like my planes.
Turn it down for you.
So don't get me wrong. I like difficulty, but I like difficulty that's not from software games.
That's fair, but like I don't know. I just want to stress to people that like these games are not as difficult as everyone makes them out to be. Like once you finally truly play them, you'll understand. It's just
the secret really is for most bosses, you stand at their feet and dodge roll, but it's still really good.
Yeah, but I don't want to I don't want to force anything.
I'm not here to sell you on what may be the greatest game
ever made.
God,
yeah.
I feel like I'm about to get peer pressured.
Yeah.
All right.
I didn't play Outer Wilds either.
I know you didn't. Nobody did.
I didn't play.
Nobody did. I will eventually.
The only person I know that's played Outer Wilds is Ryan. I think.
I don't know. I'm
You don't even
weird.
know
Every time I hear
that
someone
for sure.
refer to it being a game being like Breath of the Wild, I just lose interest.
I sympathize with that because I know you're an
'cause
anti.
they're always wrong. Like every game I've heard compared to Breath of the Wild does not come out of that comparison favorably. So that actually is what has me most cautious about Elden Ring. It will be the first like.
I mean, I've seen most of the reviews I've seen say it does Breath of the Wild way better than Breath of the Wild, which is just bonkers to me. So
I'm interested to see that because I think it has the potential for that to be true. Like from what I've seen.
yeah, and I've seen very
I have,
little.
Like every open world I've looked at, other than Outer Worlds, Outer Wilds. Man, I can't believe I was the one who did that. Outer Wilds is
so
like the
that
only
really
open
tells
world
you
I've
something
seen.
about like how badly the marketing for that game must have gone. But yeah, go ahead.
But yeah, Outer Wilds is like the only game I can think of that did an open world as good as Breath of the Wild did, and even then, like Outer Wilds is not in the same genre really as Breath of the Wild,
but
you know. So.
I think we can save our Elden Ring assessment for next week. We've gushed
our
about
assessment, sure, but I'm not. You know, I need to fanboy a little bit. I am very excited for it.
Yeah, I'm very excited for it.
We've been talking about it in our chat all day.
I legitimately was just like, yeah, I'm gonna take off work on Friday. Like it's happening.
I haven't decided if I'm gonna try to do that.
Like I've already told my supervisor and everything. Like it
depends
done.
on my workload, and it also, I don't know. I have a hard time doing stuff like that. I feel weird about it.
Tangent, but like it does depend on how comfortable you are with that sort of thing with your supervisor. But
yeah, well, it's not even that for me. It's more like the back of my brain that's like, you were supposed to be at work right now. You were supposed to be at work right now. You were supposed to be like it's not like skipping a day of school. It feels like I'm shirking an obligation, which, you know, whatever.
Yeah, it's your time off. You can do with it what you please. But
well, yeah.
All right, so let's get into the games we're playing instead of just gushing about Elden Ring for another half an hour. Which, honestly, I could do it, but
yeah.
I'm gonna go first this week. I've been playing Horizon Forbidden West. So for me, Horizon is one of those games that like. It came out, it was a brand new IP from Guerrilla, right? Like, Guerrilla was only known for Killzone before, which was like this okay first-person shooter. I know Killzone has its fans, but I was never really one of them.
What are you talking about? It was great.
I know, I said it has its fans, yeah. But Horizon Zero Dawn came out in 2017, and it was a fascinating game about this, like, tribal society, right? Like, in this post-apocalyptic...
If it had come out a year sooner, it would have been, like, goated. Like,
I know, I'll get into that in a little bit. But it came out, and it was about this tribal society that lived on post-apocalyptic Earth, and there were these giant machine dinosaur/animals roaming the planet. And you really don't get an explanation for that, right? Like, you spent the majority of the first game wondering, like, how did the world come into this state, right? And the game had, I think, really good combat, right? Some people don't like the combat. I really do. Where you hunt these machines and you have to like shoot off specific parts and analyze what parts are weak to what attacks and stuff like that. It had a story that involved Aloy, the protagonist, her journey from being an outcast to like a hero in this tribalistic post-apocalyptic society. But most interestingly to me is that it had one of the most fascinating sci-fi stories I've ever experienced in any form of media. And that is the story of what happened to the planet Earth, why these machines exist, why all life was eradicated, you know, like why the world as we knew it ended and these tribal people exist in the first place. That mystery is explored in full in the first Horizon Zero Dawn, right?
You gotta play Nier Automata, man.
Yeah, I know. And
no, because you saying that was like making me think of a game that I really like, and like Horizon never really appealed to me, but you selling it in a way that makes me think of Nier makes me want to play it.
Well, I mean, I'm just telling you the most interesting part of that game to me was the incredible story of like how the world ended and why the world is the way it is now. So, coming into Horizon Forbidden West, right? Like I knew it would be, you know, good. I knew it would be a good game, right? But I had reservations, right? Like, I knew there would be really cool new machines. I knew the world would be super interesting. They would take lessons they learned from the first game and lessons from Breath of the Wild. I knew all this going in, but my one reservation was that, okay, the mystery of why the world was the way it was the most fascinating thing about Horizon Zero Dawn to me. And that was entirely solved and explained in the first game. And now that the mystery has been solved, I don't know what could command that level of attention in the second game. I am very happy to report that that fear was totally unfounded, and the story goes in absolutely wild directions. And I'm talking about like the sci-fi and the lore and stuff, right? Like,
yeah, because we talked earlier, and I was like, I'd watched Brian David Gilbert stream a little of this game yesterday, and the writing for like the dialogue that was happening like during battles and stuff, and like it was bad.
So
I hated it.
So like, the dialogue during battles is very average, right? Like, but the game actually shines in like dialogues when you're just talking to NPCs. Like the side quest quality in this game has improved leaps and bounds. Like the facial animations on random NPCs in side quests is better than like a lot of main characters in other AAA games. Like the quality of the facial animation is absolutely ridiculous in this game.
The fidelity in this game in general is kind of insane.
Yeah,
it was insane on the PS4.
The graphics in Horizon Forbidden West, I will say this right now, this is the best looking game I've ever played, right? The fidelity is unbelievable.
Yeah, the fidelity is unbelievable.
You can zoom in to like a leaf and see detail on that. Like you can see the little veins and everything. Like it's not just like the actual asset quality. The textures are like all like so super like high res and high quality. So like it looks great. It sounds great. It has this incredible soundtrack that really it like gets you pumped while you're fighting machines. It slows down and it turns into like a more of like a melancholic, beautiful soundtrack when you're like exploring and seeing the world. All that's great. But back to my earlier point about the lore, right? Like the story of Aloy and like her companions and like her interacting with the other tribes and stuff is fine, right? I enjoy it, but that was never my favorite part of Horizon. That was the case for Zero Dawn and Forbidden West, right? Like her story was fine. Like I enjoyed it, but like it was not my main appeal.
So I guess. I'll let you finish. I'm sorry.
The main appeal, the main appeal once again in Horizon Forbidden West to me is, what happened in the past and how that is now impacting what is happening in the story right now, and the lore reveals that go along with that are insane. Quite frankly, like they're just the directions the story went in are not directions I foresaw, and I'm so glad it's going in this direction and exploring these sci-fi concepts. I'm being vague intentionally, obviously, but that's so. Go ahead, Connor. What did you want?
So my curiosity is like, does it tell you what happened, or do you have to like? Because you mentioned earlier today, I believe that you were like, you spent forever hunting down audio logs and stuff in the original Horizon. So to answer your question, the core of what happened, it tells you everything in Horizon Zero Dawn. But if you want additional details and like stories and like all the ancillary information around the core events that happened in the past, you have to look for them. But the actual what happened in the past, yes, it tells you outright because that is core to the entire structure of Horizon. Okay. So, but the other details you find and stuff, like my favorite storytelling in games, it's Outer Wilds. If you ever end up playing it, you'll realize why I love it so much, because my favorite storytelling in games is like the story that is not told to me, but that I have to like piece together based on what I'm observing.
Yeah, I get what you mean, right? Like, and this is the same thing in like Dark Souls games, right? Like the story you piece together.
Yeah, but I don't need it to be that obscure. Like, because Outer Wilds does it like. It's not like you have to read, every item description, and like there's stuff there that you could completely miss. Like you probably got it when you played Outer Wilds, but it also wasn't like super spoon fed to you. You had to piece. There was subtext, like you had.
No,
to
so I will tell you that Horizon is more of like it tells a more of a traditional narrative, right? Like in the sense that like it's not going to ask you to uncover the lore, right? Like it'll have side stories and elements that yes, you have to discover and uncover on your own, but like the core story you will fully understand if you just play the main game.
Okay.
And it's crazy to me that like this game, the map size is the same as Horizon Zero Dawn. It's a brand new map. Because she goes to the Forbidden West, right? The title, which is like basically the western part of the United States. And the map is the same, but like it's just so much denser, right? Like the first Horizon Zero Dawn, like it was great for what it was, but like looking back on it, right? Like there were a lot of like stretches of nothing, right? Granted,
it was a pre-Breath of the Wild open world
the
game.
The nothing was very pretty to look at, don't get me wrong, but like in Forbidden West, like you see so many things around you at any given time, and you can go to these places and there's interesting things to do there, right? Like obviously like it has like icons on the map and stuff that you can turn off if that's your thing, but like even aside from those icons, if you explore something that isn't necessarily marked on the map, you could still find something secret there that like you wouldn't have found otherwise if you were just like going off of like a map checklist. So there's definitely a bit of like organic world discovery going on in this game that was definitely not present in the predecessor, and I find that really cool. But yeah, like I don't know, like I think overall, like Horizon Forbidden West, don't get me wrong, like I am already 35 hours into this game. It came out last Friday, and I will not be answering any questions on how I've achieved this feat in such a limited amount of time, but I'm just so hooked on this world, man. Like it's gorgeous to look at. It's fascinating to explore, and like it's this constant push pull I'm experiencing with this game where like I'm so interested in where the story and the lore is going to go. I just want to beeline the main quest, but I also want to really just live in this world. So simultaneously I want to do like every side quest and really explore it. So I'm constantly like fighting between those two opposing viewpoints as I play this game. But all that to say is that like I'm so enjoying it. I loved Horizon Zero Dawn, the first game, and like this game is an improvement in pretty much every single way. All that being said though, Horizon Zero Dawn came out, and like a week later Breath of the Wild came out. Horizon Forbidden West comes out, and a week later Elden Ring is going to come out, and
Elden Ring is going to stomp this game into oblivion.
I just can't help but feel a little bad for Guerrilla Games, because I think they've created remarkable games. I think Horizon Zero Dawn, and even more so Forbidden West, are incredible games. But it's just the misfortune of releasing these games in the vicinity of games that people will call some of the best ever made.
Yeah, games
like,
that rewrite how you make an open world game.
So, like, what are you supposed to do, right? Like, at this rate, like, I feel like Horizon 3, if there is a Horizon 3, is going to come out, like, what? Maybe when GTA 6 comes out or something like, yeah, like Breath of the Wild 2 or, like, Elden Ring 3 or 2 or, yeah, it's just, like, a joke at this point.
Elder Scrolls 6, because, like, you know, I dunk on Skyrim a lot, but it kind of reinvented the open world.
It's just funny to me. Like, it's funny and, like, it's a little sad too, but like, I mean, it shouldn't be sad, right? Like Horizon Zero Dawn has sold 20 million copies. Which is also insane because it's a new IP, right? Like a brand new IP sold 20 million copies, which is pretty unheard of, honestly. And Forbidden West will surely do better than that. So I'm not feeling bad from a sales perspective. I'm just feeling bad from the perspective of like, this game is not going to get the love and attention that it maybe deserves, because one of the best games of all time is coming out imminently, right? And even me, who basically every waking moment, I'm not playing Horizon right now, I want to play Horizon. Friday, I'm just going to play Elden Ring like a crackhead. Like, you know, like I don't know what I'm going to do, because I do want to continue Horizon, but like I'm going to play Elden Ring.
Yeah, I was going to say, what's going to happen is you're going to play through all of Elden Ring like a monster.
Yeah.
And then have, you know, a short rest period.
I'm legitimate in saying, like, I really don't know how I'm going to handle it. Like, I know I'm going to play Elden Ring pretty much all day Friday, but like, ideally I would like to balance the two somehow, but I just don't foresee how that's going to happen.
I mean, we're supposed to get an ice storm this weekend, so you don't have anything else to do. Like,
yeah, I don't know. But yeah, those are my thoughts on Horizon Forbidden West. Incredible sequel, improves upon the original in pretty much every way, and my one concern of it not having lore that could live up to the original. But let's be fair, like the lore in it's not as good as the original, the lore, right? Because the explanation for what actually happened in the past was so freaking good. Like there's no way it would have been topped, right? But the story itself is still exceeding all expectations I had, because I did not think it would even come close. And it has definitely come close. And if you're really interested in, like, I guess, open world games with cool combat, and more than that, like, just a really fascinating sci-fi scenario, I highly recommend checking the Horizon games out.
And if you like a Sony first-party game, you know, it's got that stuff.
Yeah, I mean, like, Horizon is actually an RPG, right? So the RPG elements are at home here. So, yeah, that's Horizon Forbidden West. Who won?
Dunk. There are good things about Sony first-party games.
You say it in a way that's a
thing.
dunk.
I love
Yeah.
Uncharted. It's one of my favorite game series. Like,
Yeah.
it might be my favorite like non-Nintendo like
Uncharted.
franchise.
Uncharted is also my favorite. Like I don't like everything that comes out. Like Uncharted just has that special something to me.
Yeah,
like I value it
The
so
lack
so
of
much so
RPG
that like I
mechanics.
went and saw the movie, even though I knew I would be comparing it constantly.
Well, you got to go see it for free, didn't you?
I did, but one really cool Easter
Got to
egg.
disclose that.
One really
Come
cool
on.
Easter egg I will disclose. I don't know how sensitive you are to this, but
Easter eggs you can tell me.
so there's this section in the movie where Tom Holland like washes ashore. He's like, "Oh, that's crazy! I just fell out of a plane," or whatever. He says something to that effect. And on the beach is Nolan North, the guy who plays Nate Drake in the games, and he goes, "Oh, really? That's happened to me a few times." And I got such a chuckle out of that because
That's
like
really funny.
it
I
was-
wouldn't have gotten that because I don't know what Nolan North looks like.
he sounds exactly like Nathan Drake in real life.
Oh yeah, that makes
So
sense. Yeah.
yeah, you could hear his voice, and that just made me smile so much.
That's really.
It was
funny.
kind of like a passing of the torch.
Yeah, just kind of disgusting, but
It is, but like
also charming.
I don't know. Like if Tom Holland has to be Drake, at least let
Tom
it
Holland
be.
is not the worst possible casting for Drake. The problem is Mark Wahlberg.
I don't know.
Sully.
I feel like he doesn't have Tom Holland doesn't have the age to convey Drake.
No, he's a decent young Drake, but like
yeah. But-
he's a decent young Drake. Mark Wahlberg is not a decent young Sully.
No, he's not. But we've spoken to that many times.
No, does he say "goddamn" in the movie?
I don't think so.
No!
I don't
No!
think he does.
That's
Yeah.
not allowed. I'm not watching that movie. Nope.
I don't think I could see it if
I think I would have remembered if he did, and I can't remember it right now. So that's not a good sign. But
That's Sully.
That's the laziest writing of all time. That
It's
is
a gimme.
You don't even have to like.
they do.
put effort.
Okay, let me just say they do include Drake's like, "Oh crap," like as he's falling off of things. Like,
yeah.
they do have that for sure. They have Tom Holland say that, but I don't remember Sully.
That's great, but Sully
Yeah.
is just as important to the Uncharted experience
Yeah.
for me.
Maybe they'll learn in the sequel, which is inevitably happening at this point.
That
So,
is what that's what it seems like happened with the Sonic.
You know,
movie.
I
The
saw
first
something
one
funny
was,
online. They were like, maybe Uncharted 2 will be the Uncharted 2 of movies.
That's a
great.
good one.
Yeah, that's great. All right, Connor, Mike, who wants to go next?
I haven't played anything really, so
All right, I'll go ahead and talk about Ace Combat 5 then.
Did you not pick up Warhammer? Or is that?
Oh, I did. I just haven't played a lot of it.
Okay.
I played very little. Tutorial campaign's pretty nice, but I want to talk about Ace Combat 5 because I didn't talk about it last week, or if I did, it was like a little bit of talking about it.
Yeah.
It's pretty good. Very melodramatic. A lot of war sucks messaging in it.
How would you compare it to 4? Because I remember you saying that
Propaganda.
4 was kind of like not.
Four is a power fantasy. 5 is more of a story. There's more story in 5 that's directly told to me rather than like I have to figure it out as I go along and watch in between mission cutscenes.
And do you like that better? Or?
Oh yeah, I like when the story happens during the gameplay, so I have something to focus on while I'm mindlessly flying around.
Yeah.
I like the two to be intertwined because I just zone out cutscenes half the time. but 5 centers around the War Dog Squadron. There's 4 of you, which is way better than one. Well, what? Okay. Okay.
Are you okay?
Yeah, I'm having
a stroke right now.
Yeah, I'm having a stroke. It's way better than 4, where 4 is very melodramatic, or no, 4 is not melodramatic. My thoughts are all jumbled.
I mean, when you've played like 12 Ace Combat games, it's kind
I've
of.
played with it. They're all blending together.
Yeah.
Zero's starting to pop in there too. 5 is very melodramatic. You follow War Dog Squadron as they go through this great war between you and Yuktobania, which is just a big XP for the Cold War. There's a little bit of those dirty ukes thrown out there. A little bit of war crimes. And then it turns out that the war was organized by none other than the Belkans.
Is that like
Always-
a Kojima level reveal that I'm not?
No, not
understanding?
really. Not really. No. It's Ace Combat Zero follows the Belkan War, where like Belka invades a bunch of people and then they get stomped, and so they hold that grudge for every other game in the Ace Combat universe.
Oh, so he's like the monkey guy from Star Fox.
Imagine if Nazi Germany held a grudge and started destabilizing world governments.
Yeah, imagine.
It's literally just Belka.
Imagine if there were Nazis out in the world right now
Yeah,
causing
imagine.
trouble.
There were Nazis out there. These ones are a little bit more secret, and they have lasers.
Yeah. Good.
But yeah, there's these two Belkan aggressor squadrons that have been there. They abducted the president.
Classic.
Yeah, classic Belkans, abducting your president, and then they pull you as traitors.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, that's the big turn of the game is when you turn traitor and then flee to an aircraft carrier,
Uh-oh.
and then come back in all black planes,
Oh.
working under the president that you just rescued.
That had 4 planes for you and your squad.
Yeah. No, they painted their
Oh, they
planes
painted
black.
them. Okay.
Yeah, no. I think it's described in story as they intercepted a carrier full of Belkan aircraft.
Okay.
They just stole a cargo ship or some stupid stuff to guarantee that you're on this aircraft carrier.
Hey man, whatever gets you in the plane.
Yeah, I bet it's.
Oh, and then you shoot down a satellite
with your plane.
with your plane. Well,
Okay.
it's a satellite that they're loaded up with nukes, and you assault the control room, so you bring it out of orbit, and then they go to crash it into a capital city.
Oh, good.
Yeah, it's Ace Combat.
Yeah,
They had to put a tunnel running in there.
dude.
and
how's
then they,
the soundtrack?
Oh, I didn't even get there yet.
Pretty good, right?
Oh my god. I still listen to it.
Yeah, I believe that.
5 has some really good music in it. And I think it's the first one that set the orchestrail and Latin chanting. No, not Latin chanting. That was 4. 5 was the first one where they brought in the orchestrail instead of just generic sampled instruments. I don't remember how they did 4. Soundtrack's really good though.
Yeah, I mean, like, a soundtrack doesn't really need to have orchestrated parts to be good, right? Like, I've heard really good
No, it really doesn't.
soundtracks that don't
But-
involve instruments, so...
4 does this weird or Ace Combat does this weird thing where they blend both synthesizers, orchestral, and choirs to create their soundtracks. And it's always good. There's never I've not found a bad Ace Combat track. And I've played through
Yeah, you played a lot of it.
3 of them. And I'm about to finish 0 at some point.
The 0 prequel.
0 is a prequel that was released after 5. Yeah, like literally the recommended order is to play 0 first, then play 5 because they're literally prequel sequel to each other.
Interesting.
But they came out in the opposite order.
I wonder if they were in development at the same time.
No, Ace Combat 0 and Ace Combat 6 were though,
Okay.
which is strange considering that Project Aces is like 20 people ish.
So, okay, so if you were to do a ranking of the Ace Combat games you've played so far, how would you rank them?
Well, considering I haven't finished 0, I'd put 5 probably close to the top. 7's, I think, second, and 4's third. It depends on how 0 hits, whether that ranking gets shook up or not.
Yeah, I guess maybe the question was a little premature, but after you've run through all the games, it'd be interesting to hear you rank them.
I need to finish the Holy Trinity.
4, 5, and 0, right?
4, 5, and 0. All the PS2 games. I'm getting close.
Yeah. All right. Well, I think that's going to do it for us this week. Thank you all for listening. You can follow us at @Podcast Game Talk on Twitter. Please like, rate, and review us on any podcast service you use, including Spotify, SoundCloud, Apple Podcasts, etc. Click the link in the description of this podcast to join our Discord and talk to us there. Thank you, Connor and Mike.
Yeah, see you guys next week.
See you next week to talk about Elden Ring. Nintendo is making a live-action Mario movie starring Chris
It is
Pratt.
It's not live action.
I keep saying that, you know. It's not
I
live action.
can't. It's me, Chris Pratt.
Oh my god.
I
That's
still
twice
do
now on
you
this show.
do you
I didn't mean
really-
okay. I didn't actually mean it. I just it was a misspeak
I
that
need
time.
this in my life. I really want to see Jack Black dressed as Bowser.
You know, if I keep saying it, it's going to exist one day,
Yeah, will
and
it
you'll
into
thank me for it.
existence.